Hello. I did my clinical experience and presentation over nurse satisfaction and decreasing turnover rates within the hospital and mostly the floor that I did my clinicals on. This slide is an overview of everything that I'm going to talk about. So we're going to look at where I went, what I did, who I talked to, what research I did to get where I am. So my name is Morgan. I'm an ICU CCU nurse. I have been a nurse for about a year. I started out on a med-surg floor and transferred within 6 months. So I am part of the statistic that leaves because she was not happy where she was. I've seen many of my coworkers leaving, and I still continue to see so many of my coworkers leaving, whether it's to leave bedside to transfer somewhere else, just because they're not happy with where they're at or they're not happy with the circumstances that they are in. My goal for this class was to improve nurse turnover rates on 4B at Baptist Health in Paducah and look at why nurses are not happy where we are. Research. So I did a little research before I went to the hospital to figure out what I wanted to do my clinical over and how I was going to get there. So this is one of the statistics that really stuck out to me. Since I'm a new grad, I kind of merged this part towards that. So studies shown that almost 18% of new grads will quit or transfer within the first year of nursing. Later on in my presentation, I'll talk about how much that costs hospitals and how that's not good for the floors. We are still seeing nurses quit, transfer, leave. I feel like it's gone up since COVID, and I also talk about that in here. So this was from Kovner, and that is in a reference page. Where did I go? I did my clinicals at Baptist Health Paducah. That is where I work, but I did them on a floor that I do not work on. I did them on 4B. That is the telemetry floor. They are a step-down telemetry floor. They're not really labeled either one, but they take heart caths, open heart surgeries when they leave the unit. They are also getting respiratory, so they're getting COPD, all of those. So they're kind of merging right now. So we're seeing a little bit of everything. My preceptor was Tanya Edwards. She is the nurse manager there. She was fabulous. A few things about this floor. Typically, their nurse-patient ratio is anywhere from 4 to 6. They have 2 to 3 aides. It is I want to say a 40-bed floor, around 40 beds. And they have a charge nurse. And they have a HUC during the days, but not at night. So that's some of like the background information on this floor. This is a slide I just put in here. It talked about some of the nurses I met along the way, some of the nurses I've worked with that have helped me like my job. We have to appreciate our charge nurses, day shift, night shift nurses, orientees, students. We have to be nice to them to keep them here. And then people you work with, you become friends with. Why are nurses so unhappy? So this is some research I did before going into my clinical setting, and then I compared this to what I was talking about with nurses on the floor. So this is from my personal research. I looked at job satisfaction, new grads, staffing ratios, burnout, and stress. So job satisfaction, that's something that nurses have been talking about forever. They're not satisfied where they're at. It is an ongoing issue, a rising issue. Some of the things that can decrease job satisfaction can be working environments, staffing ratios, mandatory overtime, here recently exposure to illness, forcing things on nurses such as vaccinations, pay, and so many other factors. New grads, I talked about this earlier. New grads leave within the first year. How much does this cost hospitals? Why is this an issue? The AFSCME says that it costs about $50,000 to train a new grad nurse. That gets expensive when you hire 8 new grads and 4 of them leave. Another thing is you get these nurses trained where they can be on their own and start helping and taking care of their own patients. Well, then they leave and have to be retrained and still aren't able to take care of their own patients. And then you're constantly getting in new nurses that you have to train. You're getting less and less experience on the floors, which in the end is not good. You don't have anyone down there to help when something goes wrong. Staffing ratios, I'll talk about that in the next slide for specific to 4B. Burnout, we can go on forever about burnout. Nurses are getting burnt out. They're telling us they're burnt out. We have been ignoring it for a very long time. Stress. I looked at the NCBI and it said that nursing is one of the top stressful jobs, and I can definitely believe that. Getting nurses the help with the stress, counseling. What can we do to decrease stress? Can we get more money in to get proper amount of nurses in helping, so that's something else we'll talk about. So this is why nurses were unhappy on 4B. This is from some of the nurses that I actually talked to. I don't use any of their names. I told them that it was completely confidential. So staffing ratios. Staffing ratios have doubled since I started here as a nurse. This specific nurse, she has been there for about 12 years. When she started out on this floor, it was strictly cardiac. She said her max was 4 patients. She would come in every day, have 4 patients. On an occasion, she would get 5. Now she comes in post-COVID and has anywhere from 6 to 8 patients, which she says she's not used to, which is unsafe for her. And that's something I talked to the manager about, and she's working on getting more nurses hired, getting extra help, pulling nurses from other floors. Growth. One of the nurses says, I don't feel like I can grow anymore here. She felt that she has reached her max potential to learn. She was a charge nurse. She's like, where do I go from here? There's not a management position open. There's not an education position open. I want to leave, go to the unit, learn new things. Of course, I like that. I want her to come work with me, but she wants to stay on the floor. So that was one of the things, growth. And I talked to Tanya. I was like, more education, letting these nurses do more, run the codes, stuff like that. Shifts. One nurse, this was a night shift nurse. I stayed over to talk to a few of the night shift nurses, and this one of them had said that it will be years before a day shift spot opens. So one of her goals is to work days. She has kids. She wants to be home with at night. And there's not many floors at Baptist at all that have any openings for day shift spots. They're all night shift. And this floor specifically, once you get on days, a lot of them tend to stay for a while. So it was going to be a while before she would get to go to days. And I talked to the nurse manager about this, and she's like, we do it by seniority, who's been here the longest. So when her seniority comes around and someone else retires, move spots, go somewhere else, then she will have a day shift spot. But that's something that's kind of out of her control right now. Appreciation. One of the nurses said that she just didn't feel appreciated there. She didn't feel like she was making good friends or connections with coworkers. She didn't feel that management was happy with her or appreciative of her. So that's something that the nurse manager and I talked with her about, and how we could change that and what we could do to make her feel appreciated. My big issue with a lot of the nurses were getting floated to other floors. This is a floor that gets pulled to all of the floors. The third floor nurses cannot get pulled to the units. They can only get pulled to the 3rd floor or 4th floor. The 4th floor nurses can get pulled anywhere in the hospital, like the unit nurses. So they typically get pulled a lot more, and they don't like that. They don't like going to somewhere they don't know, they're not familiar with. So that was something they talked about, wanting to change the floating rule so they wouldn't have to get floated as often. What did me and Tanya do? So our first day, we sat down, we talked about what my goals were for this, what her goals were for this. We sat down, talked with the nurses, then we got to working on our ideas. So one of our biggest things was wanting to get nurses involved with all of the implementations that we were going to do. So we did a brag board, a star of the month or an employee of the month, and then we also got other healthcare members involved. We got PT, RT, EVS, doctors. We got everyone involved to support the nurses and support everything we were doing. We'll talk about that on the next slide. So this top one over here, this is our brag board. This is where nurses can give shout outs to coworkers or even different specialties, doctors, respiratory, occupational therapy, everybody. So they have little post-its, and they would write something like, this nurse helped me with this today. I'm very thankful for her. They did shout outs. There was a new grad who started compressions for the first time. They put that on there. They said, great job. Just kind of like a pick me up to let me know, hey, I'm thankful for you. Check out the board. The second one is our star of the month. They actually voted on who would be the star of the month. And then we put a picture up there and had the nurses put little things as to why they were thankful for them or what makes them a good nurse. So that was something everyone was excited about. This third one is something that we got with the doctors to do. So each week we picked a new doctor, and they would, we had a bin full of dress up clothes. This one has one of those feather scarves and a hat on, and it says, hey girl, get those walks in. So it's kind of like a little reminder from the doctors, hey, don't forget to do this. This one's our cardiothoracic surgeon. He said, hey girl, get those 4 walks in, because all of our open hearts have to be walked 4 times a day. The week before, there was a cardiologist, and it was like, hey girl, hold this med after my heart cath. And it's just the doctors get to be silly and give little reminders to the nurses. Baptist was already working on a few things to keep nurses and to decrease turnover rates, because this is an issue there. They're doing incentive pay for coming in and working extra, although the nurses do have to work overtime in order to get this incentive pay. PTO time, they are offering 40 extra hours to either keep or bank in for 100% if the hospital's overall turnover rates decrease by 30%. I don't remember, but that was another one of them. The final thing everyone loves is the puppies. We have been doing puppy visits for about a year. Anyone with litters of puppies, I think it's 6 weeks or less, brings them in, and they go around to all the different nurses' stations and get to cuddle them for a little bit. And there's some pictures of those on some of the other slides. Personal effect. So I've been a nurse for a little bit over a year, and I've kind of formed my own opinions, or what I thought my opinions were, on our nurse managers. It kind of felt like they sat in their offices and didn't really want to do anything with us, didn't really care about us. But following Tanya, specifically seeing how much she did behind closed doors, really opened my eyes. They do a lot in there. Tanya went to bat for a lot of her nurses and got a lot done for her nurses in there. She even talked to me about how she wished she had more time to interact with her nurses outside of this setting that she's in, to be outside of the nurses' station helping with more things, but she's working on hiring new nurses, implementing these changes with me, and a lot of other paperwork that I wasn't allowed to be in because I worked there, but she looked very busy a lot. And this is my reference page. You guys can read all those, so thank you very much.